Minnesota's already contentious race for Attorney General got even more testy this week.
Yeah, a judge said Democrat Keith Ellison's divorce records can be unsealed after media organizations went to court to make them public. Ellison critics say those records could reveal incidents of domestic abuse, which Ellison denies. Meanwhile, the DFL party released a secret recording of Republican Doug Wardlow. At a private fundraiser, he said he would fire all of the Democratic lawyers in the Attorney General's office if he's elected.
It's just really exciting to be in a position now for the first time in nearly half a century to take this office back. We're going to fire 42 Democrat attorneys around the bat and get public.
Well, a lot to talk about there, a lot to unpack, because he has said he will not be political. But my question is, how do you find out 42 Democrats, who's a Democrat and who's a Republican?
He said he will not have an actual litmus test to determine that. But again, just as you said, he has said this again and again. This is Doug Wardlow speaking. This is a direct quote. I am running to take the politics out of that office. I can't think of anything more political than firing 42 supposed Democratic attorneys in the Attorney General's office if you can figure out who the Democrats are and who the Republicans are.
Now, the Republicans and Wardlow point out that Lori Swanson, the current Democratic Attorney General, fired or forced out 50 attorneys back in 2006 for union organizing. So, Esme, I guess organizing for a union is even worse than being a Democrat.
And Lori Swanson got criticized for politicizing the office. One reason I think she lost the governor's race.
Yeah, so that development last week with the court action and with this firing talk, this is something that is really generating a lot of controversy in this campaign. But also last week, both candidates released negative ads attacking each other.
Opponent supports efforts by the Trump administration to overturn the Affordable Care Act and coverage for pre-existing conditions.
Extreme Keith Ellison supported cop killers, open borders, and worse yet, Keith Ellison has been accused of domestic violence by multiple women.
Well, first of all, on that last ad, he's been accused by 2 women. In the first case, a judge actually sided with then candidate Ellison and had a restraining order put out against the woman to protect Keith Ellison. So I'm not sure that counts, but that's in the ad.
But these allegations of domestic abuse are dominating this race, and in fact, Keith Ellison is in some trouble. The Democrats have controlled this office for 48 years, and this might be the first time that a Republican wins. But boy, these ads are really ugly, and this is something we haven't seen this kind of visibility on this kind of a race.
But these ads are not kind of getting the running time that so many other ads are. I wonder how many people are actually seeing them.
You're right, but under the radar, I think this race is one that is going to be really, really close, and the Republicans could win this.
Absolutely. All right, Representative Eric Paulson is doubling down on an ad in which he attacks one of the state's largest health care providers. Paulson claims Alina ignored sexual harassment allegations when his Democratic opponent, Dean Phillips, was chairman of the board of directors.
7 nurses say they were subjected to lewd comments, groping, and even assault. A doctor even accused Phillips' board of covering up the harassment charges.
Phillips says the claim is a lie. The ad is based on an 11-year-old lawsuit which was settled out of court. Last night on WCCO radio, Congressman Paulson told me this.
This goes back to, Dean Phillips himself repeatedly bragging about being chair of the board at Alina, being on the board of Alina, and he mentioned it prominently in our first debate, using that as a qualification for his candidacy. And so I think his record should be examined and held to account.
What you have with this ad is something very unusual. Let's take out what Dean Phillips is saying about it. He's denying it. What you have is the attorney for the women who sued Alina accusing Congressman Paulson of using her clients as props. Lori Peterson, the attorney here, has been sharply critical of this ad. She says Dean Phillips had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I think this ad is going to be a lot more controversial in the coming week or so, right before the election. And it's not just the lawyer for the women who is speaking out. It's also the former board members and Alina itself. So all of these groups now speaking out against this ad. And this is a Congressman, Paulson, who has built a reputation over the last 10 years as someone who is a nice guy, who is civil, but he has really gone negative in this campaign.
And absolutely, this is also his ad. This is not a third-party ad. This is his campaign that has put together this ad. This is a very tight race, though. The latest poll, KSTP Survey USA, shows a 5-point differential. An earlier New York Times poll earlier last month showed a larger differential, about 9 points. But I think still this is a tight race.
Yeah, millions of dollars being spent in this race. This is something that is being watched all around the country because Hillary Clinton won this district, and there is a Republican congressman, Eric Paulson, who has been elected over and over again in this Democratic-leaning district. That's why everybody's focusing so much on this, and that's why this is going to go right down to the wire.
Absolutely. Well, the vice president and president have been frequent flyers to Minnesota and Wisconsin this campaign season. They're banking on their political star power.
Yeah, to sway voters and bring in financial support for Republican candidates, most notably Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. On Wednesday, the vice president made 2 stops in the Badger State. He visited Green Bay and Eau Claire.
I know Wisconsin is going to make the right choice. Wisconsin, I believe with all my heart, is going to say yes to 4 more years of Governor Scott Walker and great Republican leadership at every level.
Right now, that's a big lift. Walker's Democratic challenger, Tony Evers, says the governor's jobs plans focuses too much on big companies and not enough on people. He's also said Walker's agenda is divisive. From Washington, he says it's coming from, and he says it's not working. Now, several polls do show Walker is trailing in this race. Evers is a longtime educator, well-known state superintendent of schools. Look at these numbers, Esme.
Wow. That is significant there, a 10-point differential. I do want to point out, though, that a Marquette poll around the same time did show just a 1-point differential. So the polls are very different here. But Scott Walker may be in trouble. He's had a remarkable run.
Boy,
he won
ever.
in 2010.
Yep.
He won that recall election in 2012. And then he, of course, is reelected in 2014. Now he says this is the toughest battle of his political career.
Yeah, think about this. This is a governor, and I've never heard of anybody like this before. This governor has won 3 governor's races in 2 terms, in 8 years. So he's a very, very strong candidate. He does have his eyes on the presidency. Ran once before, maybe running again. But this could be a movement depending on how well Donald Trump is doing in Wisconsin. Of course, he won Wisconsin.
Right, but I think one of the problems for the governor is that there are a lot of voters who think he does have his eye on not Madison, but the White House. And I think that's a problem. I think also you've got Tony Evers, the superintendent of public schools. If, in fact, Scott Walker loses, this could be the revenge of the unions and public school teachers. Yeah,
as they tried to do 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Now, President Trump is underwater. He still has pretty good approval ratings, but still, he won the state, and now he's below. Look at this, these numbers, 53% disapproved. I'm surprised his numbers are actually going up after Brett Kavanaugh, so he's doing better, but is it enough? That's the question.
Absolutely, and there are other polls that show him, notably the Rasmussen poll shows him with 51%, so we'll see.
Yep.
The polls are different, folks.
Yep.
Politics Show on WCCO with Pat Kessler and Esme Murphy.
Minnesota's Iron Range has been one of the most consistent Democratic areas in the country for decades, but Republicans have a very big opportunity to flip Minnesota's 8th congressional district in these midterm elections coming up.
The district stretches from Taylor's Falls and Lindstrom through the Iron Range and Boundary Waters to Canada. A poll out last month showed a dead heat between Democrat Joe Radinovich and Republican Pete Stauver. I traveled to the northeast part of the state earlier this week to speak with the candidates for Congress and voters. At an assisted living home in Taylor's Falls, residents talked to Pete Stauver.
For the seniors, don't need anything more cut.
Right.
Need to add a little bit more on.
Yep. Those are benefits that you earned, and I want to protect them and strengthen them for you.
130 miles away in Duluth, Joe Radinovich talks to union members.
We're going to be outspent in this race, I hate to say it, but what we have are people.
Radinovich warns Republicans will cut senior entitlements.
And to me, it's not only wrong, but it's immoral that we would finance tax giveaways for the wealthiest people in this country at the expense of programs like Social Security and Medicare.
If you have any doubt about how important the 8th District congressional seat is nationally, when we went to Taylor's Falls and Duluth earlier this week, we found members of the U.S. House leadership campaigning for both candidates. Wisconsin Congressman Mark Pocan was with Radinovich. Georgia Congressman Doug Collins with Stauber.
Thank you, Mr. President.
In June, the president came to Duluth for Stauber. If this is a referendum on the president, are you going to win?
We'll look at the jobs and the economy.
Stauber says the president responded to an appeal to reverse the Obama administration's mining ban.
And I said, Mr. President, that was the biggest assault on our way of life in northeastern Minnesota.
He's got 2 ads up right now.
Radinovich comes back to the president's tax bill, which he says cut work-related travel deductions used by union and trade workers.
Those deductions are all going away in this tax bill. The people who want to deduct the cost of a corporate jet will still be able to do that.
And again, this race, a dead heat. If you look at the poll, 44 for Stauber, 44 for Radinovich, 43 for Stauber. This is a dead heat. This race obviously is one that is very significant. It is a significant pickup for Republicans. I can tell you that the Republican Party firmly believes this is one of their best chances to snatch a seat that is currently in Democratic hands with Rick Nolan.
Yeah, anywhere in the country, they think this is going to be one of the big ones, and it's why President Trump was there, of course, and the vice president, as you pointed out. But remember, this is a seat that has had a Republican in there for only 2 years. Out of the last 60, Republicans think they can win it, but Democrats, this is still a stronghold. Even though Donald Trump is very strong in the district, they still think they got a shot.
Right. And you heard Joe Radinovich there saying he is being outspent. He is being outspent, both in terms of outside money and the amount of money that he has raised. He's raised about half of what Pete Stauber has raised. But I do think when you look at this race, this is going to be so close. In 3 of the last 4 elections, the winner has won by less than 4,000 votes. 2 years ago, just 2,000
Yeah,
votes
this is going to be a great one to watch, not just here, but all the way around the country.
Absolutely. Well, we are 22 days away from the midterm elections in Minnesota. Now, you don't have to pre-register. You can register in person at your polling place on November 6th.
Right, but elsewhere in the country, the deadline is already passed, and a lot of voters will not be eligible. That's why there's been a big registration push nationally. According to the nonprofit group Vote.org, there was a huge increase after pop star Taylor Swift spoke out on the election. She endorsed 2 candidates in her home state of Tennessee, also on her Instagram page last week.
According to Vote.org, in the 24 hours after T. Swift's post, 65,000 potential voters registered. To compare, that's more than the entire month of August, which brought in 56,000 registrations. Pat, 42% of those people who registered to vote were between the age of 18 and 24.
Yeah, the group that normally doesn't vote in very, very high numbers. Normally it's seniors, so that is a very, very big number. And this is going to be a really big storyline to watch during the midterm elections. Who can vote in different states, when they can vote, and whether they get out to vote. All of those are going to be really important.
And Taylor Swift's pitch came again the evening before voter registration closed absolutely for good in 18 states. That differs dramatically from what it is here in Minnesota, where you can vote or register to vote the same day. Minnesota is only one of 11 states that has that.
So you look at these numbers, it's really remarkable how many people can register on Election Day. Look at these different numbers. So this would be comparable, what, Esme? 2012, you had 500,000 people voting. 2016 in the election, 353,000, and that's a 12%. Look at that.
12%.
Registering on Election Day.
But what I found really fascinating is diving deep into these 2016 numbers. What I found is that individual counties that had higher than the average, Beltrami 17%, Clay 18%, Winona 15.4%, Blue Earth 18%, these were all counties that went for Donald Trump big time. Will there be that surge for the Trump-backed candidates this time around? We have to see.
Right, and remember, we're talking about Election Day registration here, but we have a new law in Minnesota where you can vote early with no excuses, and those numbers are going through the roof. There are so many more early voters right now. Look at how many. 223,000 absentee ballots have been requested. 85,000 have already been returned. That's going to be a big, big difference also.
And that's a 200% increase.
Unbelievable.
So not clear what the impact is going to be.
Right. Well,
Thursday marked a star-studded day at the White House.
Yeah, President Trump hosted musicians like Mike Love of the Beach Boys and Kid Rock. The president signed the Music Modernization Act. That's a bill that updates all of the royalties and copyright rules for the music industry. But it was the president's Oval Office sit-down with Kanye West that stole all the headlines. Here's just a little part of his 10-minute freewheeling monologue.
I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy I love this guy right here.
Let me ask you this question. You're in the Oval Office.
Okay.
How does it feel to be in the Oval Office?
Oh, it is good energy in this.
Any good energy?
We feel that stop and frisk does not help the relationships in the city. As black people, we have to take a responsibility for what we're doing. We kill each other more than police officers. Or we have to bring jobs into America because our best export is entertainment and ideas. But when we make everything in China and not in America, then we're cheating on our country. You know, people expect that if you're black, you have to be Democrat. Something about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman. You made a Superman. That's my favorite superhero. And you made a Superman cape for me. If he don't look good, we don't look good. This is our president. He has to be the freshest, the flyest.
He can speak for me anytime he wants. He's been a great guy. He's a smart cookie, smart. He gets it.
Man, that was surreal and fascinating at the same time. This was Kanye's second meeting with President Trump since 2016. He was there to discuss issues affecting the African-American community.
And the president is out on the campaign stump talking about this meeting with Kanye West, suggesting that this is going to help him with African-American voters. You heard Mr. West say there, if you're black, they assume you're a Democrat. Well, let's look at the numbers here, Pat. In 2016, 89% of African-Americans voted for Hillary Clinton.
Well, the president is on the campaign trail. Was he using Kanye West? Was this a prop for President Trump in the election? I think we're going to see a lot of people talking about
it to sell shoes?
Him. Well, it could be one of the, he showed the shoes. So, you know, Conway has clearly endorsed the president, and we do see this every election cycle. Of course, celebrities and big names coming out of the woodwork to support all of their candidates.
Right. But this issue of the African-American vote is really critical here because not only did 89% of African-Americans support Hillary Clinton, the African-American vote overall in 2016 was down 7% over the year before. It was the biggest drop in 20 years. Had those 7% of African-American voters voted statistically, we would be talking about President
So
Trump.
we're going to see if how the motivation is going to be to get out voters.
Absolutely. Well, just this week, Samuel L. Jackson tweeted his support for a Minnesota congressional candidate, Angie Craig.
Which is why I'm here, scooping out bits of kitty treasure for her. It's really important that Angie wins so the Democrats can take back the House, and I'd do anything to help her.
Well, during campaign stops in Rochester and Duluth, we mentioned President Donald Trump endorsed Minnesota's candidates like Representative Jason Lewis, Senate candidate Karen Housley, and congressional candidates Jim Hagedorn and Pete Stauber. This begs the question, do celebrity endorsements matter?
Well, I don't know. I love Samuel L. Jackson doing that, but
I'm not sure it's going to help.
It's not going to help. Yeah, but it was really entertaining to watch. And just like Bowser from Sha Na Na came into town and endorsed Dean Phillips, does that really help?
I don't think that's going to help.
No. When the president of the United States endorses somebody, I really do think that helps.
I could not agree with you more. I think having President Trump come to Duluth and stand with Pete Stauber, having him come to Rochester and stand with Jason Lewis and Jim Hagedorn, I think that's a huge help. But I do think that big political endorsements from stars can make a difference. Let's go back to 2008 and the Iowa caucuses. Oprah came in and endorsed a little-known state senator, U.S. Senator Barack Obama, and he won the Iowa caucus.
Yeah, but that's Oprah. That is Oprah. Well, Oprah can do whatever she wants. Yeah. So, but if it's a labor union, that probably helps. If it's the president of the United States, or if it's Oprah, that helps. But in general, Hollywood celebrities may not help. That's my experience.
All right, but the thing is, some of these elections we've had in Minnesota are so close.
Yeah.
Going back to the Franken race,
so
307 votes, 2,000 votes in the 1st congressional district last time, 2,000 in the 8th. A celebrity endorsement could help.
Yep, there it is.
Well, looking ahead to big political stories this week, tonight in his first 60 Minutes interview since taking office, President Donald Trump talks to Leslie Stahl about missing journalist Jamal Khashoggi. That's at 6:30 here on Channel 4.
On Tuesday, Ellison divorce files that are scheduled to be released, his attorney says she will appeal that.
And on Friday, 2nd Congressional District candidates Jason Lewis and Angie Craig face off for a live debate on Twin Cities Public Television. And of course, Pat, there is the unknown. It is impossible to say what could be happening an hour from now.
Oh, yeah.
This
I know, that's the way it is.
So a lot going on here. We, of
Yep.
course, will be here monitoring it throughout the week.
Yeah.